My name is Anne MacMillan, and I am the founder of Real Neurodiverse, resources for level 1 autistics and their families across the lifespan. And I'm very thankful to Autism Today for putting together this incredible summit and bringing all of us together from across the world. And it's fantastic to be presenting on the heels of Dr. Shore, who is himself a level 1 autistic, formerly known as Asperger's. And it was great to hear him talk about his own marriage and his own dating experiences. The work that I do is specifically with level 1 autistics who are married, and many of them have families and children. And I've put together some resources to support these families because autism affects socializing, and of course, family relationships are social relationships. They're some of the most intense and important social relationships that we have in our lives. The title of my presentation today is Beyond the Double Empathy Problem. And first of all, it's really important that with autism awareness, people come to understand that many, many autistic children have level 1 autistic parents. Autism has a genetic component. We'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes, but it makes sense then that when we find autistic children, it would also be very valuable to help their parents figure out if one of the two parents is on the spectrum. And this is important because autism affects social relationships, family relationships, or social relationships. And many of these parents may not have any idea that one of them is autistic. Now, of course, not all parents, all autistic children have an autistic parent, but some of them do. If you are unfamiliar with Damian Milton's double empathy problem, it's something that you should definitely know about. Damian Milton is an autistic researcher out of the University of Kent. And in 2012, he set forward the idea that people with differences have difficulties understanding and empathizing with each other, that there can be a mismatch between two people that can lead to faulty communication. And of course, within this context, since Dr. Milton is autistic, he is talking about a non-autistic and an autistic, people with very different brains and very different ways of perceiving and navigating the social world, that there can be a mismatch and leading to faulty communication between the two. And most importantly, that it is the responsibility of both people to understand the differences between their two brains and what they can do to improve that communication so that relationships can be improved. So what I've done, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me in just a minute, is I've put together a 10-step neurodiverse family systems approach that provides credentialing for providers across the globe. One of the primary complaints that my clients have is that if they are level 1 autistics, or they're the spouse or a family member of a level 1 autistic, they may get a diagnosis, but once a diagnosis is found, there aren't really any solutions or resources that they deem to be adequate. And since there are many, many challenges and some strengths associated with these neurodivergencies, not getting the support for those challenges can be really, really difficult. So my programs provide credentialing for providers across the globe, and resources and quantitative assessments that they can give to their clients to support neurodiverse family members as they move through this double empathy problem and look for finding solutions in their family relationships, in the most important relationships of their lives. If you're interested, you can find me on YouTube. I'm Anne MacMillan. I'm at realneurodiverse.com. At realneurodiverse is the little @ sign on YouTube. Please find me there and follow me. I will be releasing a lot of my information for YouTube. And the other thing is that I have a lot of my information recorded into short videos. So today, what I was thinking I would do is play some of these videos for you. These are the same videos that providers can get access to if they get credentialed, and then they can use these same videos to share with their clients to help their clients understand what is going on in neurodiverse communication and what solutions that they can utilize in order to improve their lives. So I am going to start by playing this video which introduces me, and you'll learn a little bit more about me and my background. And then, let me see, so I've got to share the screen again. Right. Okay, I got it. I can do this technology, I think. All right, so here I am Anne MacMillan, and I was married to an autistic man for over 20 years. I didn't know that he was autistic when I married him. I actually figured it out while I was working on a master's in psychology at Harvard University. And I changed my research emphasis and did some of the world's first quantitative research on autism and marriage. I opened up a private coaching and consulting practice in the year 2017. And since then, I have been working with many clients in neurodiverse families, helping them find strategies to move their lives forward successfully in a way that makes them happy. Interestingly, after I figured out that my husband was autistic, I also realized that I had an autistic mother and 2 autistic siblings, all with level 1 autism, all out in the world functioning in the best ways that they knew how, but without any knowledge of their autism. And I am going to take this a little bit further. I also believe that I am neurodiverse, although I am not autistic. And I have neurodiverse children, although they are not autistic. And in this program, we will be talking about neurodiverse families and what actually happens inside of them, inside of our families, since I am part of a neurodiverse family, and is how communication occurs and what some of the challenges they face are, so that you as professionals can give them the resources that they need to really live the fulfilling lives that everyone deserves. I look forward to sharing this program with you, and I'm glad you're here. Okay, so hopefully I will, let me see, hopefully I will get this tech part down really more quickly. Let's see. A little bit going back and forth. All right. So today, like I said, I will be showing you some of the videos that are available for the professionals, and then similar videos for the clients who are part of the program, my programs that can support level 1 autistics and their families. And specifically, we will be talking, I will be defining the double empathy problem in more detail. We'll talk about the reality that level 1 autistics are all around us, in our families, in our community. Some of them are leaders. We'll talk about how autistics and non-autistics perceive and navigate the social world. And I'll talk about neurodiverse family systems and how we can support providers across the world so that they can better support neurodiverse families. Let's get started. And hopefully the idea is, since I am here live and I'm playing videos, that I can do some audience interaction through the chat. We did start a little bit late today, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to go over, or if just some of this information will have to be cut out. But no big deal. You can find me at realneurodiverse.com, or again on YouTube at realneurodiverse if you would like some more information. So let's see. Let's go back. I'll get faster at this. Okay. So first, I am going to give you some more information about the double empathy problem, just because it's really important that we understand what it is we're trying to solve. In 2012, autism researcher Damian Milton coined the double empathy problem. Most simplistically, his proposition is that a lot of the social difficulties that autistics are facing are due to a lack of understanding between autistics and non-autistics. Basically, he says that autistics are better at socializing with autistics, and non-autistics are better at socializing with non-autistics. And I would say that he's right. If you have ever observed level 1 adult autistics interact with each other, they seem to socialize much more smoothly than when they're trying to socialize with the non-autistics. And as a non-autistic myself, even a non-autistic who has a lot of experience socializing with level 1 autistics, I can clearly say that there's a lot less friction when I'm socializing with other non-autistics. It's easier to socialize with other non-autistics as a non-autistic. When there's a lack of difference between the way the brains are interacting socially, socializing is smoother. So in a sense, Milton is saying that neurodiverse socializing is a lot more difficult. It is. And I know that part of the problem is that non-autistics are projecting the way that their brain works onto autistics and assuming that autistics understand the social world the way that they do, and that projection causes a lot of problems. And the reason why I know this is because I did that for years. I was married to an autistic man for a little over 20 years. And during that time, I spent a lot of time projecting my brain onto his, assuming that his brain functioned the way mine did. And honestly, all that did was cause me and him a lot of grief and pain. Now, of course, I didn't know that he was autistic. I didn't know anything about autism, but I can certainly say that my role as a non-autistic had an impact on the way our interactions happened. And I really believe that we will all get along a lot better as the non-autistics understand how their own brain works, and therefore how the autistic brains around them work, and vice versa as much as possible. Level 1 autism is much more apparent in children. Over time, as autistics gain more experience with the social world, they use their declarative memories or their memories for facts and details to memorize how the social world works in order to gain more social success. They often use a trial and error strategy, and when they find that something works socially, they repeat it. But what this means is that many adults whose autism could have been apparent when they were children is not very apparent in adulthood, and that they are going under the radar for diagnosis. They are a big part of our communities and our social lives, and they are certainly a very influential part of our online communities where we are communicating via text in different forums and on different social media channels. They're in the workplace and they're in many families, and their presence is not necessarily recognized by much of anyone, and often not even by themselves. Many autistic adults were never diagnosed as young children. They were born earlier than the 1990s, and they just grew up using their declarative memory and everything that they could muster inside of themselves to figure out how to manage the social world, and they succeeded to a great extent. Yet their brains are very different than non-autistic brains, and there are many communication difficulties happening all of the time, online, offline, in the workplace, in families, in our communities, when autistic brains are trying to communicate with non-autistic brains, and non-autistic brains are trying to communicate with autistic brains, and neither party knows that the other person's brain is different than their own. Because why would we assume that? Why would anyone just assume that someone else's brain perceives the social world very, very different than one's own? And because of these differences that we don't know are there, because we all look somewhat the same on the outside, many, many neurodiverse miscommunications are occurring around us all the time. So let's take a second to reframe how we view level 1 autistic adults. Not all level 1 autistic adults are highly intelligent, but many of them are. They're using their memories to appear typical in social situations despite their lack of understanding of reciprocal communication, social cues, facial and body gestures, and the way relationships work. They want friendships. They are sexual beings who desire intimacy. They expend a considerable amount of energy working to fit in with the social world, and they want to marry and have children like the rest of us. Many of them have very successful careers, not just in technology and entrepreneurship like Elon Musk, but as doctors, surgeons, bankers, researchers, financial advisors, consultants, actors, and even politicians. They are less likely to be drawn to careers that require a high level of social understanding, careers like teachers, nurse, social worker, but some of them are in those careers as well. They are part of our world whether we recognize it or not, and they get married and have children. The etiology or causes of autism are far beyond the scope of this program, but it is safe to say that autism has a genetic component. And since level 1 autism is much more apparent in childhood than it is in adulthood, many of their children are now getting diagnosed. And in some cases, only after the diagnoses of children happens do some families start to recognize that one of the parents may be autistic too. Here's my story. I didn't know anything about my husband's autism when I married him. We were married for almost 20 years before I figured it out while I was working on my master's at Harvard. So from there, I went on to do this research, and after I'd done the research, I talked to Tony Atwood about it. And he was a little excited about it because these people who I'm calling the highbody empathetics are also a group that he recognized in his own clinic and that he calls extreme neurotypicals. Now, I've decided to define these highbody empathetics as neurodivergents rather than neurotypicals. So the term extreme neurotypical doesn't fit. But Tony Atwood and I were getting at the same idea, and that is that there's this different group of people who have a different way of seeing the world, who are commonly in these families and also in these relationships. Now, another thing that Tony Atwood shared with me that I hadn't thought of before at that point in time was that many of the people who marry autistics, not only are they these high-body empathy neurodivergents, but that they come from families where autism exists and that they are choosing life partners that are familiar. So that got me thinking, and it took me some time, but after a while I realized that my mother's mother, who had already passed away, was likely autistic. And over more time, I realized that my mother was also likely autistic. And then that two of my siblings were also likely autistic. Now, please keep in mind that in my family, this was all level 1 autism, and that level 1 autistic adults don't necessarily run out and always get diagnoses. Yet, the impact of autism on the other family members and the impact of neurodiversity inside a family is so great. It's important to have flexibility with the family members of autistics when they are saying, I think my life partner is autistic, or I think my mother is autistic, because they may need support from you, whether or not their parents or partners go out and get these diagnoses. And that the hope is that we can put support resources together for everyone, regardless of the actions their family members do take or don't take. And also, regardless of whether or not the family can afford financially to get a diagnosis. But all of this is to emphasize that level 1 autism is very difficult to recognize. I know I am just one person, but I am one person who fits into this model. And I went many, many years without having any understanding that my brain was different than many of the brains that I was closest to. You've heard me say it before, neurodiverse families have more neurodivergencies in them than just autism. An interesting 2017 study by Girardi et al. Demonstrated that autism neurodivergence and attention neurodivergence, or ADHD, co-aggregate in the same families. These researchers studied almost 1,900,000 people born in Sweden between 1987 and 2006, and found that relatives of autistics have a higher chance of being attention neurodivergents than people who aren't related to autistics. And at this point, you probably already know that many autistic neurodivergents are also attention neurodivergents, and that the American Psychiatric Association didn't allow co-occurring diagnoses until 2013.
And interestingly, this 2017 study of almost 2 million people demonstrated that autistics have a higher chance of also being attention neurodivergence than non-autistics do. So this in-clinic suggestion of the co-aggregation or the collection in the same families of autism neurodivergence and attention neurodivergence set researchers on a hunt to find the genetic link. And a few years later, in 2021, Suk Lee Ma et al. Did find a specific gene called SHANK2 that they think may be a potential gene underlying the overlap between autism and attention neurodivergence in the same families. So the main point here is the clinical research and the gene studies are demonstrating the co-occurrence of autistic neurodivergence and attention neurodivergence in the same families. And that sometimes some of the autistic neurodivergence are also attention neurodivergence, but not all the time. I am making the claim, supported somewhat by my own research, certainly supported by my own life experience and what I've experienced in my own practice. I am making the claim that there is a third neurodivergence in these families that have the autistic neurodivergence and the attention neurodivergence. So let me tell you where I'm coming from. Autism traits are distributed in the population in a normal bell curve. That means that if we took every person in the world and made a little dot to represent each person on a piece of paper according to how many autism traits they had, or what their level of autism traits was, with people with very, very low level of autism traits on the left side of the paper. And as they had more and more autism traits, we put them closer to the middle, and more autism traits till they got to the right side of the paper, we would have a bell curve or a shape that looks like this, with most of the people being in the center of the bell curve representing the neurotypicals, the people who have a typical level of autism traits, and those all the way on the right side of the paper representing those who are the autistic neurodivergence. So that would mean we'd have the autistic neurodivergence on the right side of the paper in the little tail of the bell curve, the neurotypicals in the middle of the paper, making up most of the people in the population. But there are also these people on the left side of the paper in the other small tail of the bell curve. And these people are not any more typical than the autistic neurodivergence, because the typical people, of course, are in the middle of the paper. They're in the middle of the bell curve. These people with a very low level of autism traits are the third neurodivergence that I have called high body empathy neurodivergence, or high body empathetics. I'll explain more as we go along, but I'm hypothesizing that we're not going to be able to understand or effectively support neurodiverse families until we acknowledge all of the different neurodivergencies within them, and that the three main neurodivergencies are autistic neurodivergency, attention neurodivergency, and high body empathy neurodivergency, and that all three of these different neurodivergencies are playing a role in how these families work. Let's begin by talking about how non-autistics specifically perceive and navigate the social world. When non-autistics are socializing, there is an immediate understanding, using the body empathy, of what different facial expressions and different body gestures mean, giving non-autistics immediate insight into the perspectives of the people with whom they are socializing. Non-autistics use that immediate comprehension of others' perspectives in order to formulate theoretical understandings of others' experiences based on information gleaned from body empathy over time. When non-autistics are socializing, they are taking immediate action based on their immediate understanding from their body empathy of other people's actions, also usually with a fairly strong understanding of how their own actions will affect others' reactions. And over time, having an understanding about how changing one's own behavior can therefore change someone else's behavior, because one's own behavior affects the reactions of others. And all of this social interaction happens very, very quickly. Often when I'm explaining this to autistics, I describe it as a really, really fast ball game in which the social ball is bouncing back and forth between the non-autistics at lightning speed, often without the non-autistics even being aware that the social ball game is happening because it's so familiar to them and because their body empathy happened so quickly and is something that they have been using since they were infants. Most non-autistics are hardly aware that it exists. It's just something that they have and use in social situations and that helps them perceive and navigate the social world. And this capacity that non-autistics have has a major impact on neurodiverse relationship dynamics. Because when non-autistics are using these skills and they're interacting with autistics, it can be confusing to the non-autistics that the autistics don't also use these skills in the interactions. Because the non-autistics can't conceive what it would be like to socialize without them. And the autistics, of course, can't conceive what it would be like to socialize with them, leading to a lot of challenges in neurodiverse relationships. Now let's talk through how autistics perceive and navigate the social world. Autistics observe others' actions without immediate insight into what facial expressions and body language mean, without body empathy. And this starts as a very, very young child. While their peers are picking up on the meanings of facial expressions and body language all around them, autistic babies are not observing the same level of nuance. But they are still observing a lot of more general actions and are seeking to make sense of them based on the information about others that they are perceiving. Over time, autistics gain greater and greater understanding, having memorized the meanings of others' facial and body expressions in order to better understand social situations. They use their declarative memory. They can either put memorized social information in their semantic memory or memory for facts and dates, or in their episodic memory or memory of personal experiences and specific life events. This improvement continues into adulthood until some autistic adults are so skilled at using their declarative memories that they appear very typical in short day-to-day social interactions. Most autistics, as part of this memorization, create a list of social rules to follow based on what they have learned from the social environment, applying these rules to the best of their ability so that they can succeed in socializing, but often at a sense of loss of the self and cost to the self. And this is where we get into masking. Masking refers to the experience that autistics have when they are changing their own actions in order to, from their perspective, please the non-autistic people in their environments. Autistics tend to mask for others, not for themselves, and they tend to do it in order to succeed in social interactions because they prefer when they get positive reactions from other people. But they don't necessarily agree that they should have to do it in order to get those positive reactions. This masking doesn't feel natural to many of them. It can feel like they're faking it for others, even though they don't necessarily agree with others' reactions to their faking. They can feel resentment that they are more accepted when masking than when not masking, and can have the expectation that their best friends and their closest loved ones accept them without the mask. Many autistics prefer not to mask and to stop trying to follow all of the social rules that they've memorized. They want to be themselves and behave the way that they want to behave. Unmasking, so to speak, can be particularly effective in the company of other autistics who have also chosen to unmask. And any lack of insight into how their own actions can affect others' reactions can increase this sense that masking is useless, because they are less aware than non-autistics of how their masked behaviors affect others differently than their unmasked behaviors, all creating a situation in which non-autistics and autistics have communication difficulties based on the different ways that they understand and navigate the social environment. The interplay between the differences of these navigations creates a lot of friction in neurodiverse relationship dynamics. Neurodiverse family systems theory looks at the family as a system. If you are unfamiliar with systems thinking, it is simply the idea that any one system is a component of its parts. And in family systems, the individual family members are all a part of the system. You are probably familiar with ecosystem. The fungi play a role, the insects play a role, the plants play a role, the animals play a role. Nutrient cycling happens, different biomes occur. In neurodiverse family systems, the different neurologies of each family member play a role in the system. And all of the neurologies have an impact on each other. And the way that the system functions is dependent upon those different neurologies playing their different roles in the family system. The way a highbody empathetic interacts inside the family system based on their particular neurology impacts the way an autistic neurodivergent is going to interact within the system based on their particular neurology. An attention neurodivergent will bring different qualities to interact in the family system based on their attention neurodivergence. And none of these individuals' neurologies are going to change. They are going to continue to have an impact on the family system dependent on the particular way that their brain functions. We can't expect an autistic to stop being an autistic or a highbody empathetic to just stop being a highbody empathetic. Attention neurodivergents do have the advantage of being able to use medication, and many of the attention neurodivergents are also autistics or highbody empathetics. The individual members of a neurodiverse family system are going to continue to interact in that system based on their individual neurology. And each neurology has its own strength, and each neurology has its own challenges. And supporting all of the neurodivergents with their challenges so that they can better use their strengths is to everyone's benefit and is to the benefit of the system as a whole, because the components of a family system all impact each other, just like the components of any system. And when a person with one particular neurology is managing the challenges of that neurology with less efficacy, those challenges are affecting the other members of the family, and consequently, the system as a whole.
All right, now I am going to take you to my YouTube channel to share the video about the programs that I have released for providers across the globe through Unitas TI. And hopefully this will give you some more information about what I'm doing and how I hope that we can provide the support for all members of neurodiverse families, the autistics, the attention neurodivergents, or the ADHDers, and the highbody empathetics.
The world is on the brink of understanding just how many level 1 autistic adults are in our families and communities, many of them parents of autistics, due to the reality that autism has a genetic component. And many level 1 autistic adults are also ADHD, as are many of their non-autistic family members. If you are a psychologist, therapist, social worker, clergy member, coach, or domestic violence professional, and you've come to realize just how many of your clients are either level 1 autistics themselves or family members of level 1 autistics, and you're left wondering how to provide meaningful service to this vast and vastly underserved population, my programs provide answers. I'm Anne MacMillan from Real Neurodiverse. I was born into a neurodiverse family, but back in the 1970s and 80s, no one understood level 1 autism, and I had no idea that my brain perceived and navigated the social world differently than many of my family members' brains. And then, without knowing it, I married a level 1 autistic man. Most likely because the neurodiverse interaction patterns were familiar to me from my childhood. It turns out that this is the life story of many people who belong to neurodiverse families, and that neurodiversity spans multiple generations and is very common. Right now, you may already have many clients in the position that I was in for many years. I've spent a lot of years in deep confusion. And now, 50 years later, I finally feel that I have some answers. The Real Neurodiverse Family Systems practical 10-step approach offers you and your practice everything you need to begin offering this highly underserved and seeking population the support and services that actually have a chance of helping. First, by cutting through the confusion of neurodiverse relationship dynamics through education, and then by focusing on practical relationship solutions. My journey out of confusion included a master's in psychology from Harvard University, where I did some of the world's first quantitative research on autism and intimate life partnerships, receiving the Director's Thesis Award for my work. My journey out of confusion included studying developmental psychology as a young undergrad, and then applying what I learned to the neurodiverse family I inadvertently created as an adult. Altogether, I have over 50 years of personal life experience in neurodiverse family systems, over 20 years of personal life experience in a neurodiverse intimate life partnership, and then I started my own private practice supporting adults in neurodiverse relationships in 2017. I started my private practice because I realized at the time that there were no adequate services available to support level 1 autistics as adults and their families. Over and over again, my family members and I would seek professional services, only to get answers that had been developed without any knowledge of neurodiversity, answers that were often developed by neurotypicals who also believed that we were neurotypical. Most often, the services we received did little to nothing to alleviate our confusion and improve our lives. So, when you see a need, fill a need. That's what I've worked to do. And that's what brings me here to this cutting edge of psychology. I'll admit, when I started my practice in 2017, I wasn't actually sure that I'd be able to find any solutions that would help my clients. I well understood from personal life experience how complex and difficult the problems my autistic and non-autistic clients were facing in their close neurodiverse relationships. But as a surprise to myself, I found success. And now I have translated all of my life experience, education, and professional success into practical programs professionals can use to support neurodiverse families across the world. My programs begin with a 20-section credentialing offering, preparing you and your staff to comprehend for yourselves why it is that your adult clients are presenting with the challenges you see in your clinics. You and your staff get access to over 200 brief, entertaining, and professional credentialing videos, jam-packed with information that will help you make sense of neurodiverse family systems. And then once you and your staff members receive your credential and you understand neurodiverse family systems, you and your staff are given access to programs that will help you walk your clients through my sequential 10-step approach, beginning with an educational component, offering your adult clients the same information that you just learned, and then adding resources and quantitative assessments that drive understanding and self-insight to help your clients make practical decisions to improve their lives. My team administers the programs through the Unitas TI therapy and education platform, a cloud-based service that offers practice management features such as session notes and service codes for billing purposes, easily generated narrative and data-driven clinical reports, calendars, extensive client files, and more. Everything you need to get your neurodiverse adult service practice running efficiently and smoothly, and to keep it that way, alongside 200 plus educational videos that become available to your clients with relevant support questions to help them make sense out of their lives. I present over 15 quantitative scales to help build self-awareness and measure progress over time. And I define 4 common cycles and over 15 roles common to neurodiverse family systems, as well as how the different roles, individual and systemic functions affect individuals and their family systems as a whole. And finally, I offer complementary yet contrasting developmental models for autistics and non-autistics that you can use to support your clients in understanding their own developmental trajectories based on their individual neurologies, all with practical resources that you can pull out in a hurry. Neurodiversity is at the cutting edge of psychology. All around us in our communities are neurodivergents and their families who are as desperate for solutions and answers as I once was. I will understand that neurodiverse communication and neurodiverse family systems are very complex, and that one primary reason why professionals haven't offered adequate services in the past is the reality that the professionals are just as confused, maybe even more confused, than the neurodiverse family members themselves. We need to do more for neurodiverse families than just offering diagnoses. An autism or ADHD diagnosis doesn't help neurodivergents understand how their different brains are affecting their lives and their relationships. Autism affects social relationships. Marriage and life partnerships are social relationships. And many level 1 autistics and their spouses had no idea that neurodiversity even existed at the time that they tied the knot. Parenting is also a social relationship, and the neurology of the parent and the child affect parenting styles and decisions, and ultimately, child development. Real Neurodiverse offers level 1 neurodivergent adults and their families the services that they need to navigate the social challenges that are having major impacts on their daily lives. If you work primarily with couples, Real Neurodiverse offers intimate life partnership programs. If you work specifically with adults managing neurodiverse family conflict, we offer a general neurodiverse family systems program. And if your clients are wondering how their neurodiversity is affecting their parenting, or their partner's parenting, REAL offers programs for parents. My 10-step approach supports individuals as they navigate the important decisions that they need to make, with the objective of helping individuals find the most healthy and family-affirming solution possible, considering their realistic circumstances, offering support resources and quantitative assessments all along the way, all to support personal growth, greater self-awareness, and practical answers to complex questions. This is the cutting edge of psychology. My hope is that you will bring your experience and your great expertise in the form of feedback and suggestions that will continue to mold this model and that will contribute to this field so that members of neurodiverse families can finally get the support that they need and deserve. I offer my foundational theory of what is happening in neurodiverse families based on my education and life experience and my own private practice, as well as how to practically support level 1 autistic adults and their neurodiverse and neurotypical family members as they work to improve their own quality of life so that we can begin gathering better and more theoretically based data and establish evidence-based solutions that will actually work. Please reach out to me or my Unitas TI support team for a demo. You can find the link in the description or visit my website at realneurodiverse.com. I'm Anne MacMillan from Real Neurodiverse.
So thank you so much for having me. We've only got a few minutes left because we got started a little bit late. If anyone has a question that they think can be answered really briefly, I'd be happy to try and address that now. And since we're out of time, if you've got any questions for me, you can reach me via email at anne@realneurodiverse.com, and I will put that in the chat. And I've, and great thanks to Autism Today and the incredible work that so many people are doing to try and support autistics and their families across the world. And I'm so grateful to have been part of this. So again, if you've got a question that you think can be answered briefly, please put it in the chat. And otherwise, please email me at anne@realneurodiverse. Happy to take questions if we can in the next couple of minutes. And I cut out a video too so that I could end on time so that the next people could have their full hour. Let me see. I'll put my website in the chat. And here's my email. And I'm glad we got this going despite the technical difficulties that we began with. All right, well, thank you again to Unitas TI and my great team there and all of the support that I've had getting these programs available, and again to Autism Today and all of the great volunteers and the many people who are working their hardest to make sure that autistics and their families across the world get the support that they need so that they can use their strengths and manage their challenges in the best ways possible for them and their families and the world.